this week's edition of the weekly Rushes, and I'm not drinking coffee because it makes me go batshit crazy, so instead I'm going to be going for some Barocca, because that sort of gives you energy and isn't as bad for you. Oh yeah. So what's happening in the world of streaming and film this week? Well, the first story I want to share with you is about Lady Gaga. Oh yeah, lovely Lady Gaga, coming hot off the heels of House of Gucci, which hasn't, well, I was going to say hasn't gone down well, but it's being nominated for all sorts of awards. I thought it was very creaky, very simple, and very sort of cartoony almost, but Lady Gaga was absolutely the best thing in it. Lady Gaga, in interview, has said that she is desperate and would love to play Mary Magdalene in her next role. And I remember vividly from when I was a child and watching Jesus Christ Superstar, Mary Magdalene is a sort of really curious figure because, of course, she's sort of represented as a harlot and a prostitute. And I remember thinking, wow, there's even a sense of frisson in the Bible and with Jesus and being tempted and all that kind of stuff. She says of wanting to play the part, you know what, I always wanted to play Mary Magdalene, but I think that's because I was fascinated by her growing up, because she was seen as this harlot that was essentially Jesus's girlfriend, and she washed the feet of Christ. She was also there at the Ascension, and she was there at the Crucifixion. A massive character, and you know, as she says that, boy, can you see it. Boy, can I see it. She has that sort of seductive allure. You know, I almost feel like they need to do a Last Temptation of Christ again, where, was it Barbara Hershey who played Mary Magdalene in that, directed by Scorsese? Oh, I think that would be a really rich part for Lady Gaga. What do you think? Next up is a quite compelling documentary that's going to probably land on Netflix. It's called Tick Tock Boom. Obviously riffing on the Tick Tick Boom, which is the movie starring Andrew Garfield, all about, I think, a musical composer. This documentary, Tick Tock Boom, not surprisingly, is about TikTok, the social media platform, but it looks at it in a 360-degree way. It might be a little bit like that documentary Social Dilemma. Was it The Social Dilemma? It might be a bit like that. It looks at both the positive and the negative. It homes in on an influencer called Deja Fox, who says, I'm enjoying the kind of financial freedom I honestly never knew I would even be able to have. That is sort of what it's done for me, but it also has some negative effects. And she goes on to talk about, obviously, trolling, negative comments, pulling her down about body image and all that kind of stuff. And the documentary also focuses on people who have used the platform for political messages and ends. There's a particular girl or woman called Feroza Aziz, young Afghan-American woman, who wanted to show the lack of human rights in China. Interestingly, she had it pulled down because, of course, TikTok is a Chinese-owned social media platform. And this documentary also explores the algorithm, the way in which apparently it genuinely sort of promotes and rewards people who are considered beautiful or more sexy than others, and actually penalizes those who are deemed by the algorithm to be ugly. I think that'll be a really compelling documentary. You may have seen, it's been in the press a lot this week. We touched upon it in Coffee Moaning. I touched upon it on the Popcorn Junkies Instagram account. Peter Dinklage has gone, understandably, batshit crazy about the brand new Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs live-action remake by Disney. It's probably best if I just quote Dinklage. Fucking backwards is what he says of the fact that they're making this. I think he's assumed that they're probably going to, you know, conform to stereotypical portrayals. But he also went on to say, I was a little taken aback when they were very proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White. You know, his point being, if you're willing to kind of depart from tradition from the original and cast a Latino actress, then surely you need to depart from the conventional portrayal of the dwarves. He goes on to say, what the fuck are you doing, man? Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? Obviously, he's infamous for his part in Game of Thrones. He won an Emmy for that, and he also played the writer in the film Elf, starring Will Ferrell. Rachel Zegler is in the film. She's from West Side Story. Gal Gadot is playing the evil queen. I think we reported that a while ago. Disney have pushed back on this, and Disney have said to avoid reinforcing stereotypes from the original animated film, we're taking a different approach with these 7 characters and have been consulting with members of the dwarfism community. We look forward to sharing more as the film heads into production. Now, as I understand it, Disney has all sorts of sort of officers or assistants or representatives who look into, say with Aladdin, to make sure that, you know, stereotypes aren't perpetuated, that representation is fair and balanced and all that kind of stuff. So it's a hot potato, and I'm sure that Disney have the sort of checks and balances in place to make sure that this, you know, the dwarfism community is represented meaningfully. And interestingly, by all accounts, Disney are intending to CGI or animate the dwarves within the story. James Gunn, whose series Peacemaker is on HBO Max, starring John Cena, Peacemaker being one of the spin-off characters from the Suicide Squad. Cracking film. If you haven't watched it, go and check it out. It's just scatological and nuts. It's just a crazy rush of adrenaline through the superhero landscape. It's just brilliant. Peacemaker is apparently a real hit over in the States. We haven't seen it yet. We can't get it yet because the HBO Max app isn't available here. But James Gunn, the creator-director, is already looking at another spin-off, but is being a bit sort of guarded about which other character from the Suicide Squad it would be. So I wanted to ask you, which one would you like? Would you like Ratcatcher? Would you like Idris Elba's, is it Bloodsport? Would you like Harley Quinn, you know, Margot Robbie in a spin-off series? He's kind of intimated that it's going to be very different to Peacemaker, so it might not be quite as comedic. But talking about Peacemaker, I thought this was fascinating. He had the idea for the John Cena Peacemaker spin-off from the Suicide Squad whilst in lockdown, and he says this: I was having heavy anxiety like a lot of us were, and I needed something to take care of myself. That's where the show comes from. I needed something to soothe myself. Imagine living a life where needing something to soothe myself isn't a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, a gin and tonic. It isn't a bath, it isn't yoga, it isn't a run, it isn't making love. No, it's making a 9, 8, 7-part series for HBO Max called Peacemaker. Wow. He also went on to say he's on the set of Guardians of the Galaxy Episode 3, and sadly he's confirmed that this will be the last outing for the Guardians of the Galaxy within a formal film. I'm pretty sure the characters will carry on in other films like they did in one of the Avengers films, Avengers Endgame, I think. But again, he says this is the end for us. This is the last time people will see this team of Guardians. I just want to be true to the characters, and I want to be true to the story. I want to give people the wrap-up that they deserve, so that's always a little bit scary. I'm doing my best. And I think that's a good thing, don't you? You want to leave the audience and you want to leave the public wanting more. And too often now, films just go on and on and on. And I could well imagine that in another 20 to 25 years, it would be really retro to revisit this. I'm beginning to think that these studios are already building into their current franchises the idea that in 10, 20, 30 years' time, like Star Wars, it will be able to hit the nostalgia button. Ant-Man star Evangeline Lilly, she's been in the crosshairs because she essentially has been critical of the vaccine mandate for coronavirus. She says nobody should ever be forced to inject their body with anything. She, like Black Panther star Letitia Wright had to come off Twitter and Instagram for causing offence with her, I think she reposted an anti-vax video at some point. It's a hot potato, this. You've got to be really careful. I mean, to be fair to Evangeline Lilly, she says she's pro-choice before COVID, and I'm still pro-choice today. I think I'm inclined to agree. I think my recommendation is get the vaccine, get the booster, to be safe and to help others. But I do think you have to step back slightly. There's a difference between advocating that, encouraging that, suggesting that, explaining that, and actually enforcing it. I kind of have a degree of sympathy for her, but it's very dangerous, and you know, you run the risk when you're in the public eye of being cancelled or marginalised or, you know, hated upon. Another documentary is coming out, Nothing Compares. Guess who that's about? Nothing Compares to You. Sinead O'Connor. Sinead O'Connor is in a documentary directed by Belfast-born director Catherine Ferguson, and it's going to be a film about a 5-year period, in a sense, in her life, from pretty much the 1987 release of her debut album, The Lion and the Cobra, through to her infamous 1992 Saturday Night Live appearance, where she did some sort of creaky rendition, I can't remember the song, but she also tore up a photo of the Pope, because around that that time, the first stories of child abuse in the Catholic Church had started to come out. She's had an incredibly traumatic and difficult life, Sinead O'Connor. She never really set out to become a star or a celebrity, and the crown that's weighed heavily on her head has often led to many breakdowns, and she's been kind of caricatured and pilloried by the press, and much, you know, she's suffered much hate. I would argue, I briefly met her years ago and interviewed her. She was an incredibly sensitive, incredibly vulnerable, and very sort of gentle person with strong opinions, but she came to them quite meaningfully. It's going to be an archive-based film. Sinead O'Connor is only in it for a performance at the end of the film, though her voiceover is threaded throughout. I'm already getting a sort of sense that this might be a sort of like Amy Winehouse type thing. Nicolas Cage. I can never pass up on a Nicolas Cage story, can I? Let's face it. He's declared that he's officially a goth as he prepares to play Dracula in the forthcoming comedy horror Renfield. He's starring alongside Nicholas Hoult, Awkwafina, and the project is written by the Rick and Morty writer. Renfield was, if you don't know, was Dracula's sort of erstwhile assistant and colleague in a sense, henchman, his henchman. But whilst prepping and whilst getting ready to play Dracula within this, there was an interview with Nick Cage, and he was talking at length about the word thespian. And I want to share what he says, because I'm not entirely certain what he's saying, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And this is what he says about the word thespian. I sound like a pretentious fart for saying thespian, but acting now has become like lying. It sounds like I'm lying. If you're a great actor, you're a great liar. Thespian seems more like it's about finding some truth within and then projecting it for others to get it. At least it does me. I think what he's in a roundabout way saying is to be a thespian or called a thespian, you're playing the truth. And I have to confess, I think he really played the truth without sounding pretentious and wanky in his movie Pig, which was a kind of meditative, sort of mindful portrait of a man's connection and belonging to this animal, which is a pig. But what proves that he's a goth beyond the fact that he's playing Dracula? He has a pet. He has a pet crow. I kid you not, a pet crow. And he says, crows are very intelligent and I like their appearance, the Edgar Allan Poe aspect, Cage says. And he says, I like the goth element, I am a goth. He's soon to appear in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, in which he plays a slightly neurotic and anxiety-ridden version of himself. We've reacted to the trailer, head elsewhere on the channel and you'll find it. Batshit crazy, like everything else. Mandy, batshit crazy. Most of his films are batshit crazy. He was also in the remake of Bad Lieutenant, where every time he looks somewhere, he sees a lizard. I mean, it's just, he takes on bizarre parts. Do check out Pig as well. So I can well imagine that his rendition of Dracula is going to be absolutely ludicrous. And finally, coming to Netflix on February the 16th, is a 3-part series, and you're not going to believe this. This is a documentary series about Kanye West. It's an archival documentary, a little bit like the Sinead O'Connor one, a little bit like Amy, Senna, about the Formula One racer, a little bit like Maradona, made by the Asaf Kapadia. I think I probably pronounced his name incorrectly. But this is all about Kanye and the footage that's been got. Kanye West never signed a release form, but Netflix don't really mind about that. I mean, traditionally, you know, he could kick up a fuss because, you know, you need to sign a release form in order to say, yes, you can use my image and yes, you can use me. But this film, this series has been bought up by Netflix for something like $30 million. There's something like 300 hours of footage. When they arrived at their first rough cut, it was a 14-hour rough cut. So you can see why they elected not to make a film, but instead to make a series, a limited series. But it's interesting what we see him doing in some of the footage. You see him walking nervously down corridors, looking to score a recording deal with Jay-Z. I think we're going to see a vulnerable Kanye, which perhaps he wouldn't be too happy about seeing. You see him talking with his father, his estranged father, shortly after his failed attempt to win the presidency. I don't know if you remember that. I think he got about 1.7% of the electorate of the vote. And then there's another scene with him talking to doctors about apparently a debilitating injury that he received to his jaw after a crash. It's going to be intriguing, it's going to be revealing, and there's a huge vogue for these archival documentaries where it's just about available footage. There's another documentary coming out which is called Fire of Love, which has been made about a married couple, volcanologists, I think that's what they are, they study volcanoes, and they were both consumed by the lava of a volcano. But their footage remains, and a director, a filmmaking team have got access to the footage, and they're making a documentary, or have made a documentary for National Geographic all about the couple. So what are the films of the week? Well, there isn't much coming out this week. In fact, I've only got 2 films to recommend. I've got Parallel Mothers, which is a Spanish film directed by Pedro Almodovar. He's a cracking director. He's made many films back in the day. He did Women on the Verge of Nervous Breakdown, Tango. He did the movie with Antonio Banderas last year or the year before, which was absolutely excellent. This film stars Penelope Cruz, and it also stars Milena Smith. They are both brilliant. I'm not going to give away the plot, obviously. I've seen it in a preview screening. Put it this way, an incredibly dramatic, incredibly traumatic story pivots around the fact that the 2 of them have had babies at the same time. It's slightly comedic, but it's actually quite traumatic and quite surprising too. So that's Parallel Mothers, but it's definitely, you know, subtitled, so you've got to be up for that crack. The other film is Sing 2. I saw Sing 1. Was it them in a sort of Britain's Got Talent type thing with them all singing? I'm pretty certain it was, with lots of guest voiceover artists kind of chucking their all in, famous people singing. Well, with this film, they've got Sing 2 out, and it's they're trying to put on a new show or whatever. But the voice artists are Matthew McConaughey, Reese Witherspoon, and Scarlett Johansson. So that's a great one for the kids. I remember our kids really liked Sing. I think Maddie maybe was a bit too old, but I think Kiki enjoyed it. So there you go, Sing 2. And that was your rushed rush through the weekly rushes. And finally, my Barocca has fizzed up. See you next week.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.